Welcome, everyone, to our first upbuild conversation of 2021. It is January 1st, New Year's Day. Happy New Year, Hari Prasad.
Happy New Year, Vipin.
Happy New Year to everyone. Um, so it has to be the first upbuild conversation of the year because it's the first day of the year. And I'm really excited to talk to you about your end of year reflection in this conversation, which has become a bit of uh, it's a bit of what's the word I'm looking for?
Tradition.
Tradition. Yes, thank you. It's become a bit of a tradition over the last few years, and I'm so excited that I get to go deeper into this with you.
Thank you. I'm honored, and I'm also really excited. As I was sharing with you, the subject is so motivating for me to work on myself, and I would love if we could share something meaningful and really beneficial for others.
Amazing. So the first question I had was you so this is the third year in a row that you've shared an end of year reflection,
Yeah,
and 2 years ago you shared a reflection about creating separation between my experiences and myself.
that's right.
And then last year you shared a reflection about creating solitude, creating a platform for solitude, and that's all about the retreats that you've built into your schedule and one that you're about to go on right after this podcast or in a few days. And and then this year you've shared a reflection about letting go of the results. So before we get into that, how do you choose the theme of an entire year for yourself? Like, what was the inspiration this year for the theme, letting go of the results?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am trying to evaluate and categorize a ton of information that has been flying at me all year, and in some ways that has been building up for many years. Um, and I'm very prayerful that I will be able to receive what is the message that is truly meant for me. And I take it as a personal assignment that there's something which I am meant to be working on. There's something I'm meant to be looking at. And I need to know what that is. And I figure that will be the most valuable thing that I could share with anybody else. And um, so it's a meditative experience, and it's also a suspenseful one as I'm thinking about it and I'm wondering, well, what is it that has really hit me this year? And it's so many things, and they're coming from all different directions. And then I key in on, well, what is the thing that I really need to work on? And for the past 3 years, and I hope that this will continue, it has come from something that my guru has said. Um, it's some instruction, some teaching, some wisdom, and in this year's reflection, it's also crazily aligned, like really echoed by other teachers in my life, and I felt like it was a constellation that created a force that really grabbed me.
And are there other themes that are close seconds or get discarded along the way? At what point did you decide this was the thing?
Wow, that's another good question. I think it's in my mind. um, I'm just buzzing with all kinds of things, and it's not super clear until something like just grabs hold. So there's nothing in particular that I was discarding this year, and in the previous years also. I mean, sometimes it's even happening where I'm trying to write up an outline for what it is that I would want to share, and that did not happen this year. But in the past, I've done that where I just need to see, okay, what comes out on the page, and then things get revealed. It's like in our workshops, we always encourage people to be present and to listen to presence, because you will learn things. You'll learn things that you didn't know were there. And when we do exercises and you see what's coming up for you, we don't realize the things that are coming out of our mouths until they've come out. So that's a really powerful experience. I love it. So nothing has been consciously discarded this year. Things kind of develop organically.
I love your process. And I think the idea of having an annual reflection that really tries to capture what is it that I have learned this year, what is the biggest thing that I've learned and the biggest thing that I'm working on, continuing to learn and assimilate. It feels, yeah, it's almost like you have a set of books for your life, and you have themes for each year, and it is, I can imagine that would be really helpful, powerful for many people to do, for myself anyway. So that all the lessons aren't getting lost and mixed in with others. There's some order and
That
focus.
well, that's even helpful for me to hear. It just anchors it further. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think again, things become clear like as we're going. I just spontaneously started, I think in 2018 with the idea to do this, and then I realized, wait a minute, this is a very, very good thing to repeat. And then I got attached, and I felt like for my own benefit, I must do this. I feel called to do this. And now here we are, and I'm learning as we're discussing it. And that's also why I was so much looking forward to this forum of the upbuild conversations, because I'm trying to be present right now, and I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm going to learn a lot.
So that was a good segue, because you just talked about, and then you did it in 2018 and you did it in 2019, and then you got attached and you said, I have to do this every year. I have to do it again. And this theme, this year you wrote about letting go of the results, which is directly related to getting attached to even something that is really beneficial for yourself. So can you just share maybe a snippet, a summary of what is the message that you really wanted to get across this year, and why it's so important to you?
Yeah, thanks. So the main message is that we are all addicted to control. And that's why in our workshops, we focus on what we call the controlling consciousness, particularly in our Enneagram workshops. You'll find this, although it is omnipresent in the work of Upbuild. We are all addicted to controlling, getting things our way. When things don't go our way, we're not happy. When things do go our way, it's like victory, amazing. I feel awesome, and that is a roller coaster. And it's also, if we can control the ride, it gives us a false sense of ownership over the landscape of life. It's not ours to own. It's We are very much um, on a journey that is not being led by us. There are so many forces far outside ourselves. I mean, this pandemic is a perfect representation of that. Nobody predicted this was going to happen except Bill Gates and George W. Bush. But we didn't predict that this was going to happen. And so the idea is we're constantly being uprooted from our plans, from our sense of safety, our sense of control. And we're constantly trying to go against that and get control in a world where change is the only constant. And I'm thinking of how Pema Chodron wrote a piece about finding ground where there is no ground, where it's a groundless world. There's nothing that's predictable. There's nothing that is expected, except, as they say, death and taxes, right? So there's not a lot that we have to go on, yet we're so bent on control. And that does us in, because when we get our way, we're locked in the game of control even more. We're more invested in it. And when we don't get our way, well, then we're trying to get it back, or we're um, you know, decrying the way that the world works and our lot, and we're feeling resistant and unhappy. Um, so we're in this game. And for me, I see this so clearly in myself that at every moment I'm desiring something. That means I want an outcome. That means I want control over things. And I have come to see that I'm not alone in this, that we all share this controlling consciousness. This is the stuff of life. This is our default state. And it takes an extraordinary amount of self-work, and dare I say spiritual work, to get beyond that. So this year, my determination has been to hunker down on that vital lesson, which comes up in the Bhagavad-Gita, the book that we study and teach, and which has inspired all of our work at Upbuild, and which I had become a monk to try to make the mission of my life to become self-realized according to its teachings and to share that. And the Bhagavad Gita is all about this, surrendering control, but not haphazardly, doing it with still a desire for outcomes, but recognizing that the outcomes are not all up to me. We can never let go of the outcome or the desire for an outcome. Otherwise, we wouldn't do anything. We would just stay in bed, or what, we wouldn't exist. So finding this balance, figuring out how to live with the desire to control and make it constructive to what I talk about as letting go and letting God, recognizing I have this desire, but I need to also recognize that it's not all up to me, and to be happy with whatever happens, to be accepting. And of course, the serenity prayer also comes to mind. So that's in a nutshell what the lesson is, how to surrender when the results are not up to me, which they aren't.
Right. Well, so can we paint, you said that still we'll always have a desire for an outcome. That will be there regardless.
Yeah.
So can you paint a picture of what this looks like when you get beyond the controlling? Because the desire for an outcome is there, so therefore the desire to control for that outcome is still there. So what does this look like? As you said, it takes a lot of work and dare I say spiritual work. Paint us a picture. What does that look like to still have that desire for an outcome, but also be more in a condition of letting go?
It's good that you asked, because when you were asking me beforehand if there was anything in particular that I would like to speak about, I said no, because I wanted to see what would emerge naturally. But this was the one thing that was in my heart, a vision, a vision for uh, how we can live without being controlled by the desire to control. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how can that be for anybody? So the way this works is I am essentially following the the dictates of what is most beneficial. So I'm trying to do what's most beneficial for myself and for others. I'm very conscious and considerate of what are my needs and what are other people's needs. And at the deepest level, I'm aware that every living being is a soul. And the needs of the mind and the body are important, but they're nothing relative to the needs of the soul. So the love that the soul craves and the sense of connection with other souls, and under the banner of a divine person, that is the most important, vital need that we all have, whether we're conscious of it or not, whether we have different interpretations or not. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about this, and all wisdom traditions speak about this as at the heart of everything. So when I can be considerate of everyone's needs, and particularly the core needs to love and be loved for who I am, really, not my ego, but the eternal soul, then I'm driven. I want to make things happen. I want to serve like anything. I am so determined. I will stop at nothing. And I was just writing about this last night in my offering to my guru that I make every year for his birthday. I write something, and I was hit very hard by the reflection on my relationship with him and what I received from him and his example, and how when I think about what he exemplifies, how he lives, I become infected with this spirit that I will stop at nothing to serve others. And that doesn't mean that I am foolish and that I neglect myself. It doesn't mean that I don't work within the laws of the world, but there's something that moves me that is beyond me. It's bigger than me, and it's so powerful. It's so again contagious that I just can't help myself. So, but then the real test comes when things don't go the way that I had envisioned or hoped, when things wind up very far from what I had considered. So, for example, in my vision, I'm always fueling myself spiritually. I have my, and I wrote about this in the piece, I have my morning spiritual practices that I'll do each day. And I'm so determined to fill myself up with them at the beginning of the day and let that set the tone for the whole day, and to be so present and so absorbed so that I can be the best conduit for sharing that spirit with others. And I've seen it's an extraordinary difference between when I do that and when I don't, and the consistency of that, and knowing that every single day I can count on that. That is, yeah, there's just nothing else like it. And that goes back to the 2019 takeaway about creating solitude for spiritual practice. And I did that in the beginning of this year, and it was mesmerizing. The effect of that was I was so happy, and I was so like protected from all of the craziness, the chaos of the world that I can't predict, that I can't control. But then I was not able to control that. I was not able to just keep up doing that every single day. Eventually, I hit a wall where I wasn't sleeping enough, and I got very sick, and it was really painful. And the sickness was not the biggest pain. That was terrible. I don't want to repeat that, but it was uh, it was even worse to feel like I can't count on the thing that I know is good for me and best for my ability to serve others. So now what do I do? And tying this back to what is a vision, how would I react if I were not being controlled by the desire to control? I would say, you know what? We're just going to try it again. And we're going to try harder this time. And we're going to do that every single day. And every time we fail, we're going to say, oh, it wasn't meant to be. And there's going to be some giddiness even that comes, because it's like, well, I only want to do what's meant to be. And of course, there's some discontent as well, because we want to be better. But I'm limited right now. So that means tomorrow is another opportunity to go beyond my limitations. And if I don't get beyond them, well, I'll just, really pray and try harder, and also see if maybe I'm trying the wrong thing. Maybe my methods are faulty, or maybe my goal is not realistic. And so I have to reorient. But in all of this, there's a sense of ground without the ground, like Pema Chodron says. There's a kind of resting in my own sincerity, as I love to share with people, knowing that I'm doing everything in my power. If I'm really, really trying my best, then there's nothing more that's expected of me. I just need to be listening attentively to what am I meant to learn? How do I reorient? And to be happy that I'm being carried by a force that's bigger than me. And that's what we all can learn, that we all are capable of being carried by a force that's bigger than me, and being happy with that rather than distrustful, uncomfortable, and thinking it all is up to me and I should control everything much better.
Thank you for that. What um, what I was receiving from what you said was, if I think about this desire to control that is still there regardless, there are sort of two parts that almost are important corollaries for letting go of the results, as you're saying. One, so even if I have that desire for an outcome, one is that those outcomes, if I'm oriented in the way that you're suggesting, are oriented around others and not myself. So, and therefore around service and not fulfilling the desires of my own ego. And then the second is the knowledge, or that I'm doing my best. I'm putting my best effort, and not just a throw up my hands while I did my best, but that I'm doing my best, that I am doing it every day. And I'm also trying to learn and iterate on whatever I'm doing. Maybe, like you said, change the goal, change uh, the way that I'm pursuing that goal. But if those two things are in place, then it is more likely to look like the vision that you painted.
Totally.
What else am I
Oh,
missing here?
that's really helpful. Um, yeah, the ease that comes with that is something which we are starving for, and and it's not an ease that comes from winning in the world, and it's not an ease that comes from feeling like, you know, people admire me. It's an ease that comes from being connected with the core of myself and the actual reality, where I'm not deluding myself that I get to control everything. Being connected with reality and with myself, that is the ground. Otherwise, the groundless world will never have any kind of ground. So the ease that comes from that connection, that ground, is something that calls us, and it's so important that we see the possibility of that, and we let go of all of our obsessions for how we think things should be.
So I'm excited to actually touch on an organizational context here, because one of the things that people will say, or that people do say, and even I think myself sometimes, is if I let go of the results, then will I achieve? Right? And so in an organizational context, almost every company now uses OKRs, objectives and key results, to manage their goal setting process and their quarterly results and achievements. So how do you, in that context, how does what you're talking about in this reflection of letting go of the results, how does it dovetail with what an organization needs to do, setting goals and then maniacally trying to achieve those goals, and then setting more ambitious goals and then trying to achieve those, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, yeah, it's all about the consciousness. It's all about the consciousness. You can do that, and you can do it maniacally, as you said. But why? Why are you doing it? And how are you doing it? that will determine the effect. So you may be aggressively achieving your goal, but you're creating so much stress for yourself and everybody else that you end up with health issues or turnover in the company, or there are many ways that this goes, and we see this kind of stuff happening all the time with organizations. And in our work, we see the toll that the obsessive goal orientation takes. That doesn't mean that the goal orientation is the problem. It's why we've set the goal and how we pursue the goal that is the problem. When people are inspired and they're cared for, and the goal is a good one, meaning it's actually helpful for everybody, and it's not like out of greed, which is a whole can of worms that we could talk about. It would take things in a very different direction. But when it's really because this company is offering a vital service, and we want to do justice to that service, and we believe in taking care of the compensation, the needs of the employees, all the individuals that are hard at work here, that's great. But then you also adjust. You trust your people, and you adjust your goals, you adjust your expectations according to the feedback that you're getting and the things that you're learning along the way, rather than a kind of like get out policy if you don't reach the goal. That's not to say that there aren't get out policies that are needed within organizations. We encourage companies to have them. But again, it's all about like, well, is this really what you want? Do you really want to be here given this is the way that we're going to be working and we've all agreed to as a culture?
Yeah. And so then applying this idea to individuals who also, will say, how will I have an impact without being focused on the results?
You can be focused on the results. As Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad-Gita, he's really training him up to fight in a war where the results are rather important, I would say. Uh, if he doesn't get the results, he's dead, literally. So Krishna is training him, and he's saying, look, you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the results. That does not mean you shouldn't strive for a result. Everyone is striving for a result naturally, as I said. Otherwise, why would he fight? I mean, if he's just like blasé, oh, I'm going to fight and I don't care who wins, he's dead. There's no point in fighting. You have to be serious. You have to be on the top of your game. But you also have to recognize it's not all up to you. If you think it's all up to you, that's a delusion. That's not helpful for getting results. That's a delusion. It's a recipe for frustration and a disconnect from reality. There's going to be all kinds of side effects. What to speak of spiritually? Krishna's main objective is not to get Arjuna to win the war, although that's also important to him. But the main thing underlying his getting him to fight and win in his training is to become self-realized. And actually, he's saying you can become self-realized as you're fighting. Be a yogi and fight. And what that means is to be fixed on the goal without being fixated on control. You can be fixed on the goal without being fixated on control. And then you do your best and God will do the rest.
This is really important. So to be fixed on the goal, but not fixated on control. Can you give some other examples of what that looks like outside of, so you gave an example of Arjuna in the war. Give another example maybe in your own life of what that looks like, because I think this will be really helpful to just unpack a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I think for myself, I'm somebody that's very particular about the way things need to be. I always have a vision going into any little thing. I mean, having a meal, like not just cooking, but even eating the meal. I have a vision for every little thing, how it needs to be, what it should taste like, how I should be, mindfully eating, all of that. That is not the main thing that I think about. It's more just to show you how minute this gets, how granular my perfectionist, visionary mentality goes. It applies to everything. But what I've been learning, and very much aided by writing this piece and having the forcing mechanism, the accountability of pouring the realizations onto the page and knowing that like this is the gift I'm trying to offer myself and to others, is I need to live by this. I need to start living by this. So recently, I've noticed that things have not gone my way a lot. I mean, every day there are so many ways that things are not going as I had hoped or planned. Practically at every moment, there's something that's not perfect, right? I would say at every moment. And what I've been doing is I've been just recognizing, you know what? It's not up to me. And so this is as it is meant to be. I must accept this. And and I had days where I stayed up late, and I'm all about going to bed early, waking up early for my sacred time with my practices, and having a routine and a rhythm. But there have been times where I've had to go to bed really late because there are other responsibilities and it's beyond me. And sometimes I would be so, to be very honest with you, I'd be so disappointed in myself. I would feel like such a failure that I'm not able to get the basics right. These are like the ABCs of spirituality. I was a monk for 5 years. Come on. What are you doing, Hari Prasad? And like, we're talking not even about the spiritual, we're talking about getting to bed like a baby. Come on. A baby can get to bed on time. What are you doing? It would be so painful. um, and and that has followed me, through to the end of this year. But it's from writing this piece that I've gotten some freedom, some solace. um, it's been quite incredible to recognize, you know what, it's not all about me failing. That's my ego telling me that I'm the one who's in control. I'm the doer. I'm the one who's in charge of everything. And that is just not the case. And it's never been more plain to me than now how much I am not the doer, and therefore how much I should take responsibility for everything I can. And we teach that at Upbuild, but not take responsibility for what is not mine. That becomes egoic. If I take responsibility for things that are beyond me, I'm pretending that I'm the controller. I'm playing God. So again, let go and let God, let go and let God, let go and let God. As my guru instructed me, your plan, not mine. This was the most poignant instruction. It didn't come from this year, but it's something which I've kept with me year after year, and I have a little T-shirt to honor it, thanks to Ken, one of our community members. Um, and Yeah, your plan, not mine, is my new mantra. Even though it's been with me for years, I'm making good on it in a way that I haven't, where I'm saying, you know what, it's not up to me. There's another plan. There's a higher order of things. And even if I can't believe that there's a God behind it, and even if I can't believe that it's a good plan, I have to recognize that it is a superior plan in terms of power. That is for sure. So I better get reconciled with that. And it's a lot easier to reconcile with the approach of the 12-step programs of let go and let God. Recognize that there's a benevolent force behind this. There's an opportunity in this. There is incredible growth on the other side of this by that surrender.
So in your piece, you wrote that your wife, Radha Bhakti, said in the last few days, and this was probably maybe 10 days ago, there's been a night and day difference as you've assimilated some of these lessons that have been with you for years. And there were conversations with her father that struck a chord, and a confluence of things that have happened. I want to know more about this night and day difference, and how, and what, yeah, how are you experiencing your life now? Not to say that it doesn't, bounce back and forth sometimes, but that was a really striking image of. I'm reminded of the verse in the Gita that talks about what is day and night for the living entity with material eyes versus spiritual eyes. And so I want to hear more about how you've assimilated these things in a way that's been different this time.
So there was one thing that I was hoping you would ask, and you did. Now there was one thing I was hoping that you wouldn't ask. I'm very nervous about this, and I thought you might ask this. Yes. The reason I'm nervous is because it's very vulnerable, and as I wrote, this is so shaky. I mean, I am not at all worthy of whatever she perceived in me being ongoing. It's just my commitment to myself to try to keep that spirit going. So my little disclaimer for you. But,
And I have, there's other things that I want to ask you based on what you've shared. So I also don't want to jinx anything that you have going on right now. And I'd be happy to just put a pin in the question, and maybe we come back to it over the course of the conversation. But yeah, we can. Um, you don't have to feel the need to say any more on this topic.
Thank you so much. That's really sweet. No, I feel like when asked, we should answer. It's meant to be. So yes, that was a moment I remember vividly, as you said, about 10 days ago or so, when I was going down the stairs at uh, the home where she grew up. We're staying in Toronto here for until Sunday, a couple more days, and so at her parents' home, I was running down the stairs, and things were really wild. Like nothing was fitting right. There were too many things that I had to do that day for upbuild, and my sadhana or my spiritual practices were way out of whack. Trying to get enough rest was a huge challenge, and it just didn't make any sense. It's the kind of thing where I'm asking, well, what is expected of me today? I don't understand. How is it supposed to work? Like it's just nothing is working. It's not working. I don't understand how I'm supposed to plug in. And yet I was smiling. And sometimes I can smile in retrospect, or I can smile when I'm, with other people, because I feel a sense of responsibility not to drag them into my own stuff, my own sufferings. And I feel inspired in connection with others, and trying to share what we're learning it always uplifts me. But in the heat of the struggle, when no one is watching, or when it's just my wife and I or something, it's a very different ball game. And I was smiling, and I was really, I was in a good consciousness beyond what I'm used to or what I could expect. It was very different. And she noticed it. It was not like I didn't have to say anything. So she was pointing that out. And I was pointing it out also, frankly. I was very aware of it. It was clear to me something has shifted, and I love this. May this become my life, my God. Not all the craziness, but just the shift that, like, not, and I speak about this at the end of the piece. We all want to be untouched by the world. We want to have that kind of steadiness where we're untouched by the world. Like, no one can get us down. No one can derail us. Even if we're being derailed, we're not derailed. Like, that is so powerful. And I got a little taste of that in a wonderful, wonderful way. Um, and I want always to live in that. And I want that for everybody. I really, really want that for everybody. Um, and it just comes from this idea that there's somebody else who's calling the shots, and I'm trying my best, and I'm going to fail. It's set up that way because I'm little. I'm a small guy. I am not a big deal. I am not somebody. Even if I were, uh, super rich and I could get anything I wanted, I would still be subject to the laws of this world. I would still be subject to old age, disease, and death. And I would still have countless things go beyond my control. And we see this with celebrities. We see this with big, hotshot founders, business people, those who have made it in the world. They don't get everything that they want because they can't, because they're still tiny. Even though they may be bigger than me by worldly terms, they're still tiny in the scheme of things. And we all are. And that's humbling. And we don't like that. And our ego says, become something big. You're better than that. You're amazing. And get the pep talk and do the self-help. And, self-help is now the biggest seller in bookstores or online, because we're dying to follow the cry of our ego to become something huge, to play God. And we're not that. And as long as we put that pressure on ourselves, it's just not fulfilling. It's empty. It's empty. But when we can reconcile with our small part in a bigger work of art, it's freeing. It's beautiful. I don't have to be the star. I don't have to be the CEO of the world construct. I can be who I am, humble, modest, with a smaller role to play than my ego wants, but with huge impact, far greater impact than my ego can imagine. Is when we are not following our ego, when we're following the call of the soul rather than the cry of the ego, it hits people. People are moved. We're moved. It's the most fulfilling, wonderful thing. So, in that moment on the staircase when nothing was going my way and I was happy anyway, that to me is something I want to anchor and keep with me. And it has been up and down. And I felt myself losing touch with that. And it's painful. It's that sense of I don't have control over the giving up control. I don't have control over the giving up control. But I do feel like you can't erase that. You cannot unsee that or unexperience that. And I'm better off today than I was before that experience. So I just want to offer out there that even if you're not 100% consistent all the time, because it's not within your control and it's not within my control, we are getting somewhere. And we have to celebrate the small victories always and celebrate the trajectory.
Thank you. Um, when you talk about let go and let God, or you talk about that we're small in the grand scheme of things, how what does this look like for someone who doesn't have a spiritual framework or a spiritual view at all?
Yeah, it's about getting with reality. It's about recognizing what is within my control, what is not within my control, and trying to match that up. And, the AA and 12-step framework allows for that. It just posits that if you have a relationship with that higher power, then, expect more. But if you're not there yet, or if you don't believe or you don't care for that, that's all right. You're most welcome. And please, take to heart the principle and apply it in the best way that you can. And the crazy thing is, I know so many people who came to AA, they were addicts. They came to AA without any belief in a higher power, and they were reluctant to take on that principle. And they came away with a sense, I know there is a higher power. So it's not mandatory that we come in with that sense. Um, but it's amazing what happens if we do capitalize on that potential. And so wherever we're at, there's a place for becoming our best, for trying to tap into the wisdom within us and let go of our egos. Um, and the more we recognize, as the Enneagram talks about, and Don Riso and Russ Hudson, our teachers, would share, um, the more we do this work, the more we'll recognize that we are helpless, that we don't have control over our own journey of growth. We can only do our best, and then a spiritual practice is needed, and a kind of surrender to a higher power becomes essential. But until that point, we should do everything in our power, regardless of our experience. I'm also reminded of something from Martin Heidegger, who was the famed existentialist philosopher. He was a total atheist and somebody that influenced me very much when I was at NYU in college. Um, and he based his entire philosophy on worldly dynamics. And at the end of his life, he recanted everything. Even though he was brilliant, he recanted everything. And the reason was because he found that it got him to great fame and great admiration and respect. But so much was beyond his control. He actually um, he sided with Hitler, which was a very unfortunate turn of events, because he naively thought that Hitler would spread his teachings for the benefit of humanity. He didn't realize who he was dealing with. And he was reprimanded. He was punished. He was removed from his teaching position, and his reputation was stripped from him. And he died in a very sad state. And posthumously, he released an interview with the German publication Der Spiegel. And the title of that interview, that he didn't want to come out until after his death, says it all. The title is Only a God Can Save Us. So there's a way in which you don't have to believe in God, but recognize your helplessness, and you'll see, more will come from that.
And is that what, when you think about the 12-step process in AA, what is it about that 12-step process that has many people going in with one belief system and coming out with another?
Yeah. My understanding is that, and again, this applies much broader. This applies to all of us with our addiction to our egos and our addiction to control, that we'll find at a certain point we've tried everything and it's not working. We can never get beyond our ego. That we've peeled off as many layers as we could, and we're still under its auspices. And we want to be free, but we're chained to it. So, with the alcoholic, of course, that has very serious consequences that are much more palpable than for many of us. So there's a way in which it's like I have no choice. I've signed myself up for this recovery program, so I have no choice but to express my helplessness and try. I don't have the luxury to doubt completely. I have to try this process out and see what happens. And when they experience that genuine helplessness and they try the process out and they experience that there is some help on the other side, it becomes undeniable for them. Now, that is not everybody's experience, but I know certain people who've had that experience, and it mirrors very much my own experience. I come in as a secular humanist. I entered a monastery in 2008. Well, 2007, I started my monastic training, and I was coming in almost like as a complete empiricist who rejected the spiritual paradigm. Now, in order to move into the monastery, obviously, I had to make some shifts with that. But I'm just saying, like, there was so much momentum in the other direction. And my own experience is of seeing my helplessness and recognizing that there is help. That has been hugely transformative and undeniable.
Um, Another question I wanted to ask you is, when you think about letting go, being fixed on the goal, but being able to let go, recognizing that it's not, well, two things. One, it's not entirely up to me, or it's not entirely within my control. There are other factors here, whether you believe in a higher power or not. It seems to be uh, you know, a healthy dose of reality to recognize that I'm not in full control of the outcome. And it also then seems like a very healthy coping mechanism to be able to let go in those ways, so that, like, I've done my best, I've really worked hard at this, and maybe it wasn't meant to be, so I have to try again tomorrow or the next day, or change things up a little bit. So if it's both sort of an obvious reality, maybe not so obvious always, but it seems like more connected to reality and a healthy coping mechanism, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to have this view?
Yeah. I'm with you in the spirit of that question. I think it's so hard because we're so hardwired. It's like I was saying, the kind of momentum in the opposite direction is just, it feels insurmountable. I was just reading a piece from my guru, a New Year's message, and I was really struck by, number one, how similar it was to a lot of modern self-help, much to my surprise, because he's very, very different from a lot of the messages that we typically hear. Um, and number two, um, I was struck by, and I'm very embarrassed to say this, how jaded I am. And what his message was is, believe that change is possible. Believe that change is possible. Believe that change is possible. That's your mission. And, like, we often joke about how it's like the worldly wisdom is like, you can do anything. You can do anything. It's all up to you and your ego. And here he's speaking from a very different paradigm, something that sounds very similar. And he also expresses that it is not all up to you, but you have to allow for the possibility. You have to expect miracles beyond you and position yourself for them. You have to put your confidence in the process and open yourself up to receive the results. Not the results that I made happen, but the results that I was praying for, that I was striving for, and that came, whether they are exactly as I had envisioned or not. And so the whole thing is really about being able to pick myself up and keep trying and keep learning from the experience. Um, but again, the linchpin from a different paradigm than we're used to is that it is not all up to me. I have to be a receiver. I have to become an instrument, someone who is receiving a will that is more powerful than my own. And the way that I do that is by trying to connect with the teachings um, of wisdom traditions, of principles that hold true and that are beneficial to every living being and myself, and just trying.
So you're we're coming up on an hour here, and you are coming up on your retreat for the beginning of 2021. And I'm curious, what are you thinking about as you head into this time? You're coming out of this year of this year-end reflection. You're heading into 2 weeks of as much solitude as you can manage. Um, and that's starting in a few days here. What's on your mind as you head into that?
Yeah, that's very thoughtful of you. I could use some time to put thought into that. It's been go, go, go. Um, I am taken by this idea from my guru that he just put out for the New Year's message, that I really need to open myself up to the fact that miracles can happen, and not be so jaded, and not expect that my own uh, failings, my own limitations, my own struggles, and my own small position is more powerful than the overarching reality, and you know, the let go and let God principle. So I'm, in other words, I'm finding that um, surrender to that higher will is more powerful than my own limitations and my own hang up about my limitations. So I want to really lean into that and open myself up. And I'm very clear that there are certain fundamentals which I learned from um, previous years, and particularly put into practice last year, operationalized during my retreat, that I will need increased time with my mantra meditation practice. So I'll try to spend at least, you know, hopefully a full day in just mantra meditation, if not more than that. Um, and I'll do like a little uh, oath of silence so that I can properly honor that and stay absorbed. That has been extraordinary every time I've done it. It's totally consciousness changing, and ultimately life changing. I will spend a lot more time reading sacred texts. I don't get the time as much as my soul craves. So I'm going to be laying out some really solid blocks of time for that in particular. And I'll have, you know, a schedule of things that motivate me. I'll have times around them, and I'll have like agendas per day of what I would like to accomplish, but not for the sake of accomplishing, for the sake of absorption in the spiritual energy, and in being most connected with myself, most connected with this higher realm of being. And I'm excited. I don't know exactly. I haven't developed the agenda yet, but I know that the key blocks are the um, mantra meditation, reading, and writing. Exercise will also be there. But yeah, lots of things in my mind.
Well, thank you for giving us a little glimpse of what that will look like for you.
And of course, 4 a.m. wake up time. That I really am attached to happening. So hopefully, the lack of complete control over things will not get in my way. It worked out really well last time. I'm hoping it'll work out again.
What time do you need to get to bed to make your 4 a.m. wake up call?
I mean, I was a little too flexible with that on the retreat at the beginning of last year. So I was going to bed usually around like 10, sometimes between 10 and 11. But really, what I need is to get to bed by 9 so that I can
Yeah.
get my 7 hours rest. If that doesn't happen, then I'll take a nap in the day, and that should be okay.
Okay. Well, I wish you all of the growth and peace and joy that will come from this time that you're taking for yourself. And I thank you for sharing so much more about your end of the year reflection with me, with all of us, because I've found the conversation extremely enlivening, and I hope that others will as well.
Thank you so much, Vipin. Please bless me with results and with the ability to let go of the control over results.
It's probably easier to let go of the control when you're blessed with the results.
Well, both are equally important. In fact, I would say that letting go of the control over results is a result that is perhaps the most important result.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I was really struck when you talked about that in this conversation. Great. Is there anything else you would like to say in closing?
I would just like to offer my heartfelt gratitude and make this dedication to Krishna Nandini Devi and Bhakti Charu Swami, who departed us this year, and who I was really very, very impacted by. Two wonderful self realized souls, those who were living these teachings, who went through all kinds of hardships, who gave up their lives willingly, sharing self realization and recognizing that life is about the demands of the soul and not the ego. And they exemplified it beautifully. And we're missing them terribly, but they have left us with such beautiful parting gifts. And this exploration and this um, desire to live up to the teachings of letting go of the results is very much inspired by them and for them. Thank you.
May we all assimilate these lessons. These